Chen Yiting and Zhang Jiewei will hold their wedding in 3 days. Today, they have gone out early to prepare for the most important moment of their lives. The 73-year-old Shi Limei claims to be a person who is fully immersed in happy events. The handicrafts she makes, called chunzai flowers, are only used on joyous occasions.
Doing this makes me feel like I'm still young, because my business always deals with happy occasions. Most people buy the flowers for their weddings.
Hello, we want some flowers.
We're getting married soon.
It has become a new trend amongst young people in Lugang to buy Shi Limei's handmade flowers before their wedding.
Here, this is for the bride. You should definitely have a pair of pomegranate flowers. If you want to take photos, I'll show you others. Shall we take photos?
Yeah, we will.
After selecting the style of chunzai flowers, the happy couple prepare for their photo shoot, while Shi Limei makes bespoke flowers for them. There are 2 stages in making chunzai handwork flowers: bending and twining. First, it's essential to bend the iron wire to construct the framework. Only when it's bent firmly can the shape of the flower be retained for a long time, representing the firmness and constancy of love.
Thick wire should be used to shape the framework of the flower, and then I use the thin wire to fill in the petals.
Chunzai originated in Xuanzhou, Fujian province, and has over 400 years of history. It is said that in the Ming dynasty, when a scholar returned to his hometown to worship his ancestors, his female family members placed some red handmade flowers on top of the tributes they brought when they welcomed him. The scholar felt that the flowers were dignified yet festive, so he named them chunzai flowers. Gradually it evolved into a custom in Fujian and Taiwan to wear chunzai on joyous occasions.
So beautiful.
Shi Limei learned this skill from her aunts over 60 years ago. Later, she found that this tradition had been lost long ago in both Fujian and Taiwan.
I guess people just forgot all about it.
10 years ago, Shi Limei decided to pick up her art again and preserve this tradition.
Wearing a pair of red flowers on the head expresses a happy and joyous atmosphere and indicates how much people value marriage.
Relax. Put your arm around her. Young man, let her lean against you. Yes, good. Just relax. Link your hands together. Hold hands. Lifelong happiness is right in front of you. Come on. Yeah. One more shot. Good.
I told the couple, put the pair of flowers back in the box after you've worn them and leave them to your children. The longer you keep them, the more happiness and sweetness you will experience. Cherishing chunzai means cherishing your marriage.
Taiwanese chunzai opens a door to happiness and hope, and its origin in the traditional culture of mainland China continues to provide deep roots for the present and future of the Chinese people.
I was born into a sword-making family. From Qing Dynasty right up to my son's generation, my family has made its living by making swords. I started forging swords with my father when I was 13. This year, I'm 67. I wrote a doggerel for myself. The future of the human world rings with the song of hammers. As a child, the forge was my companion. As an adult, my sweat flows down as rivers.
Swords always make people think of the ancient martial arts world. In fact, it's hard for young disciples to imagine the martial arts world of the past, but Shen Xinpei still follows the tradition of renewing his friendship with swords. Yu Shande is a 14th generation descendant of the Southern Wudang sect. As experts in sword fighting, they exchange experience and learn from each other every time they meet. recent years, most of the swords on the market have been made by precision casting. Longing for a good sword forged by hand, Mr. Yu can only turn to Mr. Shen in Longtuan. It is the tradition to worship Oye Ze, the founder of ancient Chinese sword making, before the forge is lit. According to ancient Chinese texts, at the end of the spring and autumn period, Oye Ze discovered a new metal in Longtuan, iron-infused quartz sandstone, which brought an end to the Bronze Age, starting from the Xia dynasty. The Longtuan sword he forged here became the first iron sword in history. The Longtuan sword is famous for its sharpness, tenacity, and cold light. Since then, Longtuan has been recognized as the home of double-edged swords.
In traditional Chinese culture, it is believed that spears are for generals, sticks for thieves, single-edged swords for heroes, while double-edged swords for rulers. Who can wear the double-edged sword? A gentleman. The double-edged sword has the air of a gentleman.
April, when the river floods recede after grain rain, it's the best time to collect iron-infused quartz sandstone. Mr. Shen has to find enough raw material before the next rainfall. In fact, in modern times, we have discovered the secret of Longtuan's premium swords. The iron content of ordinary iron ore is about 50 to 60%, 20% lower than that of Longtuan, whose iron content is 70% or higher. This makes it an excellent material for sword making. Using the natural current of the river to wash the iron-infused quartz sandstone in a wooden basin is an effective and convenient ancient method that has been used for more than 2,600 years.
It's good. The iron sand is of good quality and has a high iron content.
Other than quality iron-infused quartz sandstone, the cold, clear streams of Longtuan and the sharpening stones hidden in the water are considered to be the three treasures of sword making. After a whole day, the iron sand has been air-dried. Mr. Shen starts making the sword. Forging the iron is the first step. There is an old saying in Longtuan that only half a kilo of steel can be forged from 1.5 kilos of iron. The iron sand contains sulfur, phosphorus and other impurities. It must be repeatedly smelted and tempered with a hammer before sword making. After undergoing thousands of hammerings, the impurities are practically eliminated, but this still doesn't mean that the job is done yet. A certain proportion of steel with a different carbon content will be added. To integrate a variety of metals, it needs repeated forging and tempering. To make a sword as wide as his palm, Mr. Shen and his son need to hammer the metal over 65,000 times. There is an old saying in sword making: the use of a sword comes before forging. In Mr. Shen's opinion, how one uses a sword is more important than the sword itself. With the increase in humidity at the beginning of summer, Mr. Shen has to speed up the process. But as an experienced master swordsmith, no matter how tight he is for time, he has to be patient. Any tiny mistake with temperature control or force could ruin all his hard work.
Only the right level of force can forge a spirit into the sword. I only make swords when I am in a good mood. Forging swords in a bad mood would harm myself and others. The key to practicing swordplay is to avoid stagnation. Move your body like a swimming dragon, soft, smooth, yet magnificent. Balance hardness and softness, as well as motion and stillness. Imagine yourself as part of the sword, and you and the sword will be one.
A month later, the main body of the sword has been forged. After cold forging, repeated hammering, correction and grinding, a handful of iron sand has been reborn in Mr. Shen's hands. The sharpening stone, or bright stone, makes a special magic grindstone. Only by grinding the sword on such stones can it become shiny and sharp enough. Mr. Shen's family began making swords during the reign of Emperor Guangxu in the Qing dynasty. Ever since, this grindstone has been regarded as a family heirloom, and Mr. Shen is the fourth generation to inherit it. The quality of this grindstone guarantees the quality of the swords made by the Shen family. The sword is almost done, but for Mr. Shen and his son, there is one key step left as the final touch. The density of bamboo is very close to that of human bones. It is an ancestral tradition to test swords on a bamboo stem. If the sword blade warps, then all their efforts will have been in vain. The sword is a handheld weapon, and in China it was the earliest iron weapon wielded by human beings. Over the past 3,000 years, it has retreated from this role to become more of an auspicious symbol of blessing and good fortune. Today, in the eyes of Chinese people, swords embody righteousness, justice, and authority. The art of sword making is still going strong after thousands of years. In this vast land, there is yet another ancient metal art that has also recorded China's glorious past.
Bellows, take the bellows.
Mr. Niu's busiest time of year begins after the autumn harvest.
Now I will start my blacksmith work. I go out every year with my bellows. Get the rope. All right. Here comes the blacksmith! I am Niu Qisheng. My father was a blacksmith. My grandfather was a blacksmith. His father before him, and now me. My family have been blacksmiths for at least 6 generations. Iron hoes, iron spades, kitchen knives, meat cleavers, pitchforks with 2 or 3 prongs.
Blacksmithing, the oldest trade in China, has been practiced for over 2,700 years, since the early spring and autumn period. Traditional Chinese blacksmithing falls into 2 kinds: fixed furnace and portable furnace. Blacksmiths with portable furnaces are also called street blacksmiths, which is what Mr. Niu does. After arriving at the market, Mr. Niu picks a position and gets ready to begin his work. The family unloads the iron-making apparatus and sets up the wooden posts and the anvil. Mr. Niu prepares the water and mud while his son lights the furnace. The Niu family smithy is now open.
The blacksmith is here! I make hoes and iron spades!
Mr. Niu lives in Xianggong Township, Jiangsu City, Shandong Province. Jiangsu blacksmithing has been a highly respected art since ancient times. Travelling around the country with a portable furnace blacksmithing is a traditional skill included in China's intangible cultural heritage list.
I can forge anything except needles. Anything.
Mr. Niu's street vending soon attracts the attention of passers-by.
What are you doing there?
Blacksmithing was the most commonly practiced craft in China for thousands of years and was a common sight until 2 decades ago. Now, this once familiar scene has become something strange and novel. Throughout the morning, many people came and took photos, but Mr. Niu did not sell a single piece. Due to poor sales, Mr. Niu leaves for the next town. There is an ancient saying that blacksmiths are poor while merchants are rich. The work of a blacksmith is extremely hard and not very profitable. Mr. Niu's wife and son are reluctant to come out, but Mr. Niu stays loyal to his business and still sets out every year for the sake of his old customers. Business is bad today, and now their cart has a puncture.
Dawei, bring me the air pump! And the valve, it's in the drawer!
Mr. Niu doesn't want to waste any time, so he decides to leave his son to repair the cut while he tries his luck at the nearby market. Every family in Jiangchu can forge iron, but Mr. Niu is known far and wide for his exceptional skill. He's creative. His new and improved hoe has a thinner and lighter head that soil doesn't stick to. People won't even need to bend down.
Come and buy my idler's hoe! The best hoe in Jiangqiu! Not easily soiled or rusted. Look, try my hoe. If hoeing is a burden to you, then this will ease your labor. There's a kind of camera called a point-and-click camera. Anyone can take a photo with it. Even an idler would be happy to use my hoe.
In the past, Mr. Niu could sell dozens of hoes at this market. Today, he only managed to sell 5 or 6 hoes after hours of shouting.
Farming is mechanized now, and we all use weed killer. Hoes have become obsolete. That's not true. You cannot equip a cannon with a bayonet. If you have a narrow field, you will still need a hoe. That's easy for you to say. I can't tell if you are lying unless you let me try it out. Go ahead and try it.
The sluggish sales make Mr. Niu feel a little uneasy, but as a man with a cheerful and optimistic outlook, he's not worried. He became a street blacksmith at the age of 17. His footsteps have crossed Shandong, Shanxi, Henan, and Inner Mongolia. No matter where he goes, he always finds business. He meets an old customer. Today's business has finally found him a place to stay. According to travelling blacksmith tradition, they will be accommodated in the house of the family they work for. A blacksmith's customers are like family. Mr. Niu's wife sets up the stove and cooks the cereal pancakes. Wherever his wife is feels like home. Ever since his wife married him at 19, she has followed him for over 40 years.
Many women are reluctant to marry a blacksmith because they will end up being left alone at home for months on end. Even if her husband comes home for the spring festival, he just brings her back dirty laundry. Every girl would rather marry a gentleman than a blacksmith. It doesn't matter whether my wife is ugly or beautiful, or whether she's capable or not, as long as she has married me, had children by me, and started a family with me, it's my responsibility to treat her well.
Blacksmiths sell their strength. Mr. Niu and his son spare no effort in their work. The customer's satisfaction is what matters. For the long-term prosperity of his business, dishonesty is not allowed.
A blacksmith must be very honest. Integrity is essential. He should never cheat or lie to other people, or boast about himself.
After a long day's work, Mr. Niu's family lays out their bedding and prepares their evening meal. As a profession, blacksmithing has endured for thousands of years and has witnessed the birth of China's brilliant farming civilization. In Jiangxi, Henan province, the unique traditional skill of the Miao people is full of magical charm.
My name is Long Guanqing. I'm 31 years old. I am a Miao sorcerer.
Yesterday, the 83-year-old Miao resident sorcerer of Jinlong village passed away. As the most respected man in the village, all his fellow villagers attended his burial ceremony. In accordance with Miao tradition, When the old sorcerer dies, his young successor must climb a ladder of knives in order to bid farewell to the old man. Tomorrow, Long Guangqing will climb the ladder of knives. He is feeling uneasy, so he has come here to rehearse the feat. This ladder of knives was set up a few days ago. Unlike ordinary Meow knife ladders, this one was set up on the top of a 400-meter high cliff at the edge of the village. The knives on the ladder are usually 1 meter long and as wide as a man's palm. Each knife must be made of steel, tested and sharpened. In the evening, the ritual is still underway. This sacrificial ceremony, being held to honor the old sorcerer, is called Nuo opera. Nuo opera originated in Shaanxi during the Kangxi period. It integrated elements of Buddhism, Taoism, and the sorcery culture of the Miao people. For a time, it was very popular, but now it can only be seen in the most remote Miao villages. Climbing the ladder of knives is the most important skill in Nuo opera.
I'm sharpening the knives. The sharper the better. We Miao people believe that the more dangerous it is, the more it proves my sincerity.
The next day, the burial ceremony of the old sorcerer is extraordinarily grand. The whole village is excited to witness Long Guangqing's performance. This is the most important rite of intercession in Miao culture. The long-term migration and suffering of the Miao people made them believe in the idea of the man of valor. They believe that a man with the courage to climb the blades barefoot will be granted the privilege of speaking with the gods. From this moment, every step is a matter of life and death. The 36-meter tall ladder has one knife every 0.14 meters. Long Guangqing faces the challenge of climbing 256 knives. The bell Long Guangqing carries is called a shidao, or blade master. Miao people consider it a mystical instrument. People here believe that only by ringing the shidao at the place closest to the sky can the departed soul be sent away. Climbing the ladder of knives is a secret skill known only to the Miao people. It's usually taught to a successor selected by the old Miao sorcerer in his old age. Mr. Long has never attempted this feat on a cliff before.
If you climb too fast, you won't make it. The knives are too sharp. You need to be very careful.
Many traditional rites of the Miao people are dangerous. They believe that remembering the suffering of their ancestors will help them cherish life in the present. Time passes quickly. Long Guangqing's progress is not as good as expected. His elder brother is worried about him and comes to support him.
Be careful! It's dangerous! Hold tight! Hold on tight! Yeah?
The knives are extremely sharp. A single strand of hair blown onto a blade by the wind would be cut in half. But Mr. Long weighs 45 kilos. You can imagine the consequences of even the tiniest mistake. Later, Long Guangqing is high up on the ladder, but his strength is on the verge of exhaustion. It's difficult for his hands to grip the last few rungs. He needs to be very careful. Guangqing rings the shadao at last. The villagers believe the blessing of the new sorcerer will grant them a safe and prosperous year ahead. The Miao people's ladder of knives is imbued with the power of faith. In Taiwan, a gold processing technique is busy reshaping a craftsman's heart.
I am Wu Qing from Taipei. I make artistic creations using 3D wood carving and gold carving techniques. I have been doing this for more than 40 years. Gold carving is my own creation. It never existed before.
Next year, Wu Qing's current creation, Nostalgia for the Homeland, will go across the strait to be exhibited in the National Museum of China. Its sister piece, Large and Small Melons, is currently displayed in the permanent collection of the Taipei Palace Museum. It's also the only work of a living artist purchased by the Taipei Palace Museum since it was founded. After his meditation, Mr. Wu officially starts his day's work. The amazing thing is, he doesn't draw any sketches. He only creates a wood carving for reference. That's what's so unique about Wu Qing's gold carving. In fact, before he started making gold carvings, he had already made his reputation as a famous wood carving artist in Taiwan. In the afternoon, the gold carving begins. The first step is melting the gold. Choosing to work with 9999 ultra-pure refined gold is the most impressive feature of Wu Qing's gold carving. He believes it's the only way to make his creations truly endure.
Gold is just a material. Of course, many people consider it to be money, but in my hands, it's just a raw material, a material through which I can express my emotions.
After cooling and cutting, Wu Qing starts to carve the extra pure refined gold. From now on, every millimeter of this gold will be carved over 100 times. A gold carving will only take its finished form after all the parts have been assembled. In traditional silver and gold assembly processes, welding flux is frequently used. However, Mr. Wu never uses welding flux. Because the flux is composed of copper and silver, it will oxidize and darken over time. To solve this problem, Wu Qing made some improvements to his welding gun, increasing its melting point to as high as 1,400 degrees Celsius, which can fuse two pure gold parts in the blink of an eye.
I seek realism in my gold carving. I want to reproduce the original subject. I recreate the original subject, not just aesthetically, but also in meaning.
Wu Qing's creation, Nostalgia for the Homeland, due to be displayed in the National Museum of China, still needs another year before it is ready. For now, apart from breaks for food and rest, Wu Qing works 12 hours a day. He wants to show the softness and beauty of the metal art world through this ultra-pure gold.
I am not doing this for fame or money, but to achieve a breakthrough in life. I hope to transcend. I hope that my life is not just a representation of eternity, but the eternity of transcendence. I hope I can enter an eternally peaceful world.
In the world of metal, Wu Qing has established his own philosophy of life, while on the other side of the Taiwan Strait, the fishermen of Hangu, Tianjin, are following the survival wisdom of their ancestors. In February, the fishing season in the Bohai Sea is over. The New Year's work season begins for the fishermen. The people fish the seas using an ancient and unique method. When they encounter a shoal of fish, all the fishermen start clashing with cymbals and beating drums. Fish and shrimp are attracted to the noise, so they crowd around the boats, enabling fishermen to catch them quite easily. Hangu people call it flying cymbal fishing.
I am Zhao Manzong, and I'm 66 years old. I've been a fisherman my whole life.
Zhou is a well-known fishing fleet captain in Hangu. At 4 a.m. he is ready to go. He must arrive at the dock before the tide comes in.
Come on, guys! Get on board! Get on board!
How could I not worry about them? They often go out on the high seas. Sometimes they don't come back for weeks. If it's a good day, then that's fine. But if it's a windy or rainy day or stormy day with lightning, the waves are huge. My heart beats hard and fast as the wind howls. You know there's a local saying that goes, fishermen are soaking wet and spend all year roaming the seas. Young ladies should never marry fishermen.
For Zhou Manzong, temptation waits in the deep sea far off the coast.
Fishermen must learn to judge the weather and the conditions on the water's surface. The water conditions vary. The water here is very flat, while the water there is very choppy. We are experienced at judging whether there are abundant fish and gauging how deep the water is. This is how we decide which direction to head.
The Bohai Sea has an area of more than 77,000 square kilometers. Zhao started fishing with his father when he was 17. He's been doing it now for 49 years. After sailing for over 8 hours, the day's fishing finally begins. Hangu fishermen have their own methods of harvesting resources from the ocean.
You have to clash the cymbals very hard, loud, and fast so that the fish and shrimp will be lured towards us. Drop the net! 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 The drum beat played by genuine traditional fishermen has a special name called chaozi. That's the rhythm we use. The drum beats we play on the sea have been passed down over many years.
After the nets have been cast, Zhao and his crew must wait patiently for the right moment to draw them in. The flying cymbals are called Fei Cha. The Hangu symbol was created at the beginning of the Guangxu reign during the Qing dynasty. Ever since then, all the fishermen in Hangu have used symbols on their boats.
When I was around 18 years old, I loved having fun, so I used to play a bamboo flute. One time I took out my flute, and while I was playing, a pod of finless porpoises started playing around my boat. They were circling around it. There was a huge pod of them, big and small, twisting about and jumping around. One of the smaller ones even jumped, bam, right into my boat. A big one, like this big, landed right beside my feet, so that made me realize that fish and shrimp have an ear for music too. They also love to join in the fun.
Good brass is needed to make the flying cymbals for fishing. Of all the metals, brass produces the loudest sound and can reach up to 110 decibels within a distance of 1 meter. That is why the sound of cymbals can resonate far over the surface of the ocean. The nets have been underwater for 3 hours now. The wind and waves catches the crew off guard, so they are forced to draw their nets in early. Today's catch is not good. In recent years, the fishermen have often returned empty-handed. In Mr. Zhao's view, the problem of overfishing has changed the ecological environment here. The crew hopes to have better luck with their next attempt. The fishing boat continues to sail across the ocean. Subtle changes appear on the surface of the water, and the ship quickly grows lively. In times before communication technology, the sound of cymbals was the signal for boats to collaborate, and they are still using this way today.
Pull up the nets! Pull up the nets!
The heavy nets are hard to pull up. It seems like they have a good catch this time. Clashing the cymbals makes the fish agitated and makes it easier to pull the nets in. The fishing boats return with their catch. Their families are waiting for them on shore. The cymbals are clashed again, celebrating a good catch. The whole village of Taijaipu in Hanggu knows how to play cymbals. Using their flying cymbals, they fish in the sea to make a living, celebrate a good catch, and pray for happiness.
Wait a moment. Let me go and pick that up. My name is Wu Zhengdong. I grew up in Kinmen in 1958. When I was 7 months old, the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis broke out. So you could say that I grew up with these artillery shells.
Wu Zhendong was born in 1957. When he was just 7 months old, the Second Taiwan Strait Crisis broke out. In just 44 days, hundreds of thousands of shells fell on the island of Kinmen. After that, both sides of the Taiwan Strait continued the shelling by following a mutually accepted pattern of fighting on odd days but not even days. The conflict lasted until New Year's Day, 1979.
I would be lying if I said I hadn't been afraid. Of course I was afraid. The conflict lasted 20 years and 3 months, from when I was just a year old to when I was 20.
When Kinmen became a battleground, no one imagined that the shells fired during that conflict would one day become the unique raw material used to fuel Wu Zhendong's career.
The island of Kinmen is not large. Artillery shells can be manually evacuated at any construction sites where diggers are operating. Military bases used to be distributed along the whole coastline. Those post-shaped rocks are called a post stockade. Their function is to prevent boats from landing there. This entire area out here is a minefield. At that time, we hated the war. So I guess the people of Xiamen must have hated this war as well. And they must have grown up in fear, too.
Over 3,000 shells are stored in Wu Zhendong's warehouse. A big shell can be used to make over 50 meat cleavers or 80 large kitchen knives. The metal from the shells in his warehouse alone are enough to make hundreds of thousands of steel knives. Wu Zhendong was born into a family of ironmongers. In the Guangxu period of the Qing dynasty, his grandfather learned his trade in Xiamen, Fujian province, and established a blacksmith shop called Jinhe Li after he returned to Kinmen. When Wu Zhendong's grandfather passed away, his father took over the shop. After the Second Taiwan Strait crisis, some veterans picked up shell cases and asked the Wu family to make them into knives as souvenirs. Because the steel knives were such good quality and were sharp and durable as well, over time, by word of mouth, Kinmen knives became a popular product in Taiwan.
We used these shells to make knives, just to make use of the materials that were going to waste at that time. Now both sides of the Taiwan Strait have ended their conflict and established communication. Our road towards peace has been broadened. You could say that things like this can resolve any old historical grudges. Just as we can make these shell cases into knives, we can turn hostility into friendship.
After cutting the shell casing, Wu Zhendong begins making kitchen knives. A piece of steel is smelted in the forge. A few minutes later, he picks out a red-hot steel block, and accompanied by the thudding noise of the power hammer, the steel block is made into a rectangular sheet. Then it is thrown into the fire again, forged for a second time. The steel sheet gradually becomes thinner. The knife begins to take shape. Afterwards, the newly forged knife is submerged in oil for tempering. Then it is ground and polished repeatedly. 20 minutes later, the kitchen knife is ready. Kinmen has an area of 133 square kilometres. At one point, Kinmen is only separated from the Chinese mainland by 2,310 metres. Over 60 years have gone by, and now everything has changed.
The time of our childhood, compared to the age we are now living in, feels like a dream. In the old days, Xiamen felt so far away, like it was on the other side of the world. Who would have thought that, half a century later, both sides of the Taiwan Strait would be living in such harmony? If my father were still alive, he would be so happy to see this.
Over the history of human civilization, these brightly coloured ores from the earth have not simply been left to remain in their pure elemental form. After smelting and forging, the processing of metals has provided the inspiration for transformation and the strength for change. It was this advanced utilization of metals that served as the catalyst for modern human civilization. It is a profession that has endured for thousands of years, and that forms a link between our past and future. It awakens the wisdom of survival in people and is a record of our great courage. It has remodeled people's hearts and changed our spiritual character. Gold, as we change its form, it changes our world.
I am Fang Xuebin, 58 years old. I was born in Yangzhou. I've been engaged in gold and silver processing for 40 years.
My name is Gao Wu Huiqin. I'm from Kaohsiung, Taiwan. I'm in the metal processing business.